It is time to go to Alphonse Shank Taylor, former Alabama offensive lineman, two-time national champion. What's good on this Thursday morning, Shank?
Everything's good, man. It's a good day, you know. Get to talk about football. It's always a good day when you get to talk about ball.
It's always a good day when you get to talk about ball. There is no doubt about that, Shank. And a lot of talk here in the last 24 hours or so. Some movement on the quarterback front in college football. We like to talk about Alabama with you, but it is a scenario that's similar to one that was sort of anticipated at Alabama with Jalen Hurts. Instead, Kelly Bryant, the former starting quarterback at Clemson, makes the decision 4 games into his final year of eligibility to take advantage of the new rule and salvage that season in favor of starting somewhere else a year from now. Your thoughts as a teammate, as an observer of college football, as an analyst here on Southern Fried Sports, just your thoughts on how that went down with Kelly Bryant.
Oh, man, I kind of hurt my feelings for him, man. Just to watch a guy give so much to a program, took it to the championships, and he was so good. Even having to come in behind Deshaun Watson, he was so good. And to have that taken away from him, I feel his pain on that, man. And I seen his comment saying he never got into anything, never did anything wrong, never got into trouble. And, man, that's just a guy that's hurting right now. He's basically playing his case like, what did I do wrong to deserve to be benched? I see nothing wrong with him wanting to transfer and salvage his final year and going somewhere that appreciate his skill set.
So let me ask you this. There was a similar situation at Alabama in 2016. As you know, you were there. Blake Barnett started the game against Southern California. Jalen came in, played well. It all went from there. I think it was 3 or 4 games into that season, Blake Barnett made the decision to leave. As you recall that sequence there from a couple of years ago, what was the perception of Blake among his teammates? What was there any talk about his decision and was there any sort of maybe angst about him doing that, leaving the team like that?
Honestly, there were no hard feelings towards Blake for doing that because us as players, we understood completely where he was coming from. He was a guy that scratched and clawed to be in a position that he was in, and to get so close and to finally feel like he had it, and then losing it all, we understood completely. I mean, if anything, the fans made a bigger deal out of it than we did because from a want to play, want to be on the field perspective, we understood completely what was going through his head, and we made no big deal about it. We went to practice, we worked every day as if we would whoever was at quarterback, and that was that. That was really no big fuss in the locker room about it. I support Blake still to this day, and I'm happy to see him doing good now. I wished him the best when he left.
He's having a really nice start down there at South Florida, and kind of checking them out a little bit here in the last few weeks. Let's get this thing closer to home here. Keep it with Alabama football as we talk with Alphonse Shank Taylor on a Thursday edition of Shank Uncut, presented by Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa and Carty and Lloyd, attorneys at law. Shank, 109 yards rushing for Alabama against Texas A&M last Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. There's been talk about getting this run game to a more consistent level. Do you attribute some of this to the style of play for Alabama this year, maybe compared to some previous years? They're so explosive in the passing game. They're scoring at such a rapid pace, ripping off chunk plays left and right. That's got to factor into it, I would think. But in terms of this offensive line continuing to try to come together, what are you seeing from the Alabama run game this far?
I mean, from overall standpoint, I still think the run game is pretty good. We're averaging 5 yards a carry right now. And our offensive line has improved tremendously every game. Granted, last game they came out, started slow, but they finished really strong. And, you know, I still don't feel as if it's something we should be critical about just yet, because I feel the run game will get going when we want it to. And we'll get it going. And the passing game has been ridiculously crazy. And when you have explosive plays like that, it is kind of hard to get the run game going because you don't run it as consistently. And I still think we're experimenting with some things on offense as well, because I've seen a lot of screen attempts, short pass attempts last game. So I don't think there's nothing to be too critical about at the moment.
And isn't it more about running the ball when Nick wants to run the ball, which a lot of times, especially with this team, that's going to be in the fourth quarter, right? I mean, you're wanting to shrink the game. You're wanting to, as we've heard Nick Saban say, take the clock at that point, right? So is it more about 4-minute offense, situational running? Because with what we're seeing, again, from the explosive nature of this offense, you're not just going to stop and say, okay, let's go back to 2015 and pound it, 50 times a game. That's just not what this team is about, nor should it be, given its weapons on offense. But again, is it more about running when you want to run it on a situational basis, maybe?
I'd say so. I think we need to improve greatly upon that. Just basically being able to say, all right, we're going to run the ball here, we're going to run the clock, and going out there and being able to execute that. And I don't think we have that completely down yet. So that's something that I believe they need to improve on. And
yeah,
once we get that, I really see no flaws in our offensive system.
Yeah, I think when you've heard Nick in the past get a little frustrated with games ending in sort of this chaotic manner or without emphasis, and he talks about controlling the game, I think that's one of the big areas he's talking about is, staying on the field on offense with 10, 11, 12 play drives, whether you score or not, you take the clock, and that gets things wrapped up with a nicer bow on it than I think he saw on Saturday. Let me ask you this. Henry Ruggs III scores on a 57-yard jet sweep in the game against A&M. Is that essentially, though, from an offensive line play standpoint, a run play? I mean, it goes down as a touchdown reception, but it's literally a sweep. So how does that work in terms of blocking on a play like that?
You literally block outside zone on a play like that. I mean, looking at it on TV, you see the little pitch. That's what makes it a reception, a receiving touchdown. But as an offensive line unit, we're blocking run all the way, and we think nothing else about it.
And, they do the little pitch, I guess. So if there's an exchange miscue, it's an incomplete pass instead of a fumble. So from that standpoint, that's where it makes total sense to go with just a little flip, and it ultimately goes in favor of the passing yardage. You put those 57 yards on that 109, Shank, those rushing numbers look better, right?
Exactly. I mean, but, offensive line doesn't get love. You know how that goes.
Hey, we've got a question for you. Ask Shank. Hashtag Ask Shank. We do this on Thursdays as we wind down here with Alphonse Shank Taylor on Shank Uncut. One of the listeners, Ty Wilson, at BT Wilson 22 on the Twitter, he wants your top 3 offensive linemen in the SEC that you've seen so far this year. I know you spend a lot of time watching Alabama. I know you spend a lot of time, though, watching college football in general. But as the SEC goes, the top 3 OLs that you've seen thus far.
Well, of course, I'm going to be a homer. My first offensive line is Bama. I got to. So we got Bama, and I'm going to go with Georgia, and I got Kentucky. And Georgia and Kentucky. Kentucky's still undefeated this year. So a lot of people sleep on them, but their offensive line is playing good. The run game is flourishing. And it goes the same with Georgia. So those are my top three this year. And, of course, I'm taking Bama over everybody, though, without a doubt.
You got to love watching this Kentucky offense because they'll just go straight up Wildcat with Benny Snell and tell the defense we're coming, and they're still running the football on good defenses, Shank.
Oh, yeah, they averaging a little over 6 yards a carry right now, and it's looking unstoppable. So that offensive line and that running game is really carrying Kentucky right now.
There you go. Alphonse, Shank, Taylor, as always, Shank, we appreciate you joining us here on the program at Shank Uncut on Thursdays on Southern Fried Sports, presented by Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa and Cartier and Lloyd, attorneys at law. Give Shank a follow on Twitter at Shank2Ks50, at Shank2Ks50. Hey, Shank, have a great weekend, my man. We'll do it again next week.
Yes, sir. Roll Tide.